Good morning and happy Monday to you. TJ's Mechanic Monday, to be specific. And I'm here with Matthew from Fix It Ford. Matt, thank you so much for joining us in studio today. Always a pleasure. And we got a fun topic to talk about today. Talking a little tire safety.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is the season for doing that, right? It might be nice out today, but it's not going to last too much longer.
And it's one of those things where you want to be prepared, you want to be proactive, you want to be ready. You never want a situation with a tire to happen, and there's a variety of different things that can happen, but no matter what comes up, you want to be ready for it. And so let's jump into, before we begin the video, just some common issues. What kind of tire issues do you guys typically see?
Well, throughout the summer, we see a lot of problems with people picking up nails and other things in their tires that damage the tires. You get the slow leaks, and that's something that you want to definitely get taken care of because as it gets colder, they tend to leak even more. Another thing that we see a lot is corrosion on the rims. And so I think it's related to a lot of the de-icers that they put on around here. A lot of the older cars will get a lot of corrosion on the inside of the rims. You don't necessarily see it, but it causes a really slow leak. And as it gets colder, that slow leak tends to leak a little bit faster, and you don't want to run on underinflated tires.
Now, let me tell you about a situation I had a while back, and we did eventually get to the bottom of it, but I had a slow leak, and it wound up being where I had a nail in the tire. And so I one day come out after work and I'm like, geez, my tire's super flat. But then I took it and I inflated it and it had held air. But then the next day, flat again. Next day, flat again. And so I'm kind of going through the cycle trying to figure it out. And it seems like a nail, what we eventually figured out, punctured a part of the tire where it did have to be replaced. So when you guys, what's the difference between a tire where you can just kind of patch it up versus when you have to go full replacement? What do you guys look for?
Oh, it depends on the part of the tire. So if there's a nail or a screw that goes in the center part of the tread of the tire, then we can generally replace that or repair that. Usually we have what are called a plug patch. So you've seen plugs that actually stick into the nail hole and there's patches that cover it. We have a plug patch that does both. It's kind of the best of both worlds and gives a really good secure repair. But if the damage to the tire is on the outside of the tread where it starts getting curved, then you can't patch that because there's too much flex in the tire and the patch won't hold. So
interesting. So the air inside kind of makes that get a little loose, maybe pushes that off?
Well, it's mostly with the flexing of the tire as it drives. There's when you get to the curve part of it, that curve changes a lot as the tire rotates.
Okay.
And so as it rotates, it flexes and the patches won't hold. And so it's not safe to put them on the outside of the tires, but you can during the center on the flat part.
Okay. Now, there's a lot of different types of tires, and especially this year, that becomes really important. You have your all seasons, you have your winters. What are the types of tires, and why is that important information for drivers?
There's really 4 different types of tires. There's a summer tire that's usually a performance-oriented tire. They're great in the summer. Certainly do not want to drive on those in the winter. In our weather, they get very hard, and most cars don't come with those. We've got your standard all-season tires that we see all the time. They work pretty good in all seasons. They've got something that's more new they call 4-season, which is kind of a cross between an all-season tire and a winter tire, because then the 4th one that we have is a straight winter tire. The winter tires are amazing in the snow and ice. They make a huge difference. They're very close to what you get out of a studded tire. The problem with the winter-only tires is you can't use them in warm weather because they just don't last very long. They're too soft of a compound, so they'll dry out. Now, in Canada, they've got laws that between certain dates, you have to have winter-only tires on your car, and they have to switch tires back and forth. Now what we've got is a new tire that's usually call it like a 4-season tire that has probably 80% of the properties of a winter tire, but you can still drive on it in the summer. And we love those because it is a big hassle for people to have to change tires every 6 months. But we still get a lot of ice and snow, so we want something that works great.
So what is the difference as far as performance goes then between those all seasons versus the winter?
The big difference that you're going to see is when it's really icy or when you get deep snow. And it's actually more ice than snow, just that amount of traction that they can get on the ice. They use a different type of rubber compound. They usually put more siping in the tires, which are the little cuts in there, so there's more areas for it to grab. And so it just gets closer to being able to get that winter-only tire traction without having to change them out every season.
Now, you were telling me earlier, too, interesting, I never considered this, but technically you can buy a winter tire only, but not necessarily the case. You kind of got to get in and get them before they're gone.
Well, this is one thing, tires have a really limited lifespan. And so tire manufacturers do not want to have year-old tires in their stock because they start dry rotting and they don't perform as well. So they only manufacture for winter tires, they manufacture as many winter tires as they anticipate they're going to sell for that winter. So they make winter tires during the summer, they ship them in the fall, they sell them in the fall and early winter, and then they sell out. So if somebody is actually looking for a winter-specific tire, which in a lot of situations it makes sense, you want to get on it earlier in the season when you have a lot of options. Otherwise, if you wait till the end of the season, you might not have a lot of choices.
Now, Matt, one thing I've seen is these chains.
Yeah.
And I've never done the chains myself. I've seen them especially, when I lived in Colorado, sometimes in the really rugged areas where there's not necessarily any paved roads, but I'd see trucks with chains navigating through ice or what have you. But I wanted to ask you, what do those chains do? Do you really need them? What's the deal with those?
Chains are really good if it's really, really icy, really, really snowy. They'll get you a lot more traction. They're required in a lot of mountain passes and stuff like that where it's a life or death. Then. When sliding off the road might mean you die because there's the edge of a mountain, that becomes really serious. We don't see people using chains a lot around here because one, it's usually not that dangerous to be able to slip a little bit, and the second reason is they're expensive and they're hard to put on because you have to actually pick up the tire in most cases to put them on. And you can't drive at highway speeds with them. You have to drive much slower. And so most people would rather have a studded tire or a winter-only tire than drive slowly with chains all the time. All
right, good to know. Well, with that, we'll go ahead and get set to play this week's episode. We got Jourden and Tatum kind of getting in the shop once again, doing some tire changes, learning some things as well. And so we'll get that queued up. Stand by. We'll have that rolling in just a second.
Hi, I'm T.
And I'm Jay.
And this is TJ's Mechanic Mondays. We all know life moves fast, and you never know when car trouble might hit.
And that's why we've teamed up with Kevin at Fix It Forward here in Fargo for a monthly segment aimed to keep you and your car rolling through the valley. On this month's episode, we're here to help those wheels go round with everything you need to know about maintaining your tires and why you shouldn't feel down when they go flat.
So hop in. TJ's Mechanic Mondays starts right now.
So let's talk tires. So my first question is, how do you know what type of tire you need?
Generally, where we live in the upper Midwest, it's best to have an all-weather tire, which is fairly new technology in the last few years. The all-weather traction is great for snow, ice, and in the summer as well.
When it comes to tires, how long is their lifespan?
Depending on a lot of tires have a 60,000 mile lifespan, but anytime you get a tire that's about 6 years or older, the tread starts to get really hard and your traction is really reduced.
And then how do you know if you need to replace your tires, and should you replace them all at the same time?
Generally, like I said, if the tires are 6 years or older or the tread gets worn down to that 230 seconds, there's actually a wear bar in between the tread pattern on your tires. That's an indication, or if you start to lose grip, obviously, because anytime a tire gets worn down to that 2 or 30 seconds, your stopping distance is doubled in wet road conditions.
All right, and then that pesky tire light. So it doesn't always mean that your tire's flat. What are some other indicators that something may be going wrong?
Well, it might not actually mean that you have a flat tire, but it could mean that you have a low tire that's low on air. If that's the case, then you should go and have them checked. And also it could be an indication that the tire pressure sensor battery is diminished or getting weak. And if that's the case, the battery is not replaceable, the tire pressure sensor, and the sensor itself will have to be replaced and programmed.
All right. And then what happens if your tire does go flat? Where is that spare usually located?
Generally, most modern vehicles do have a spare tire, some do not. Normally, most vehicles, the spare is going to be located in the trunk underneath the trunk deck. The spare tire should be in there.
All right, and then what are some tools that you're gonna need to change that tire?
Generally, again, there's usually a jack and a spare tire wrench in the trunk along with the spare tire. So there should be instructions along with that on a placard. And just make sure you use the jack and lift your car in a safe manner so there prevent any injuries. So after removing the jack and the lug nut tool out of the trunk of the vehicle, before jacking up the vehicle, you want to make sure you just loosen the lug nuts a little bit. The next step is to position the jack on the pinch weld underneath the vehicle. Rotate that clockwise till it makes contact with the body of the vehicle. It may take some effort. You may need to reposition the tool.
So once you've gotten your tire off the ground, what's the next step?
The next step is to finish removing the lug nuts.
So take this again.
Correct. And generally, once you get them loosened enough, you can remove them by hand.
All right, Kevin, I got all the bolts out. What's next?
Awesome. You can grab the tire and set that aside. And then you want to install the spare with the angled lug nuts holes outwards.
Now we just put these back on.
Start hand tighten the lug nuts. You want to get them as snug as you can by hand. Then what you want to do is just give them a little tug with that wrench. Maybe hold onto the tire as well with one hand. Just give it a little tug on each one of them. Right now, it doesn't matter which order that goes in.
All right, Kevin, we got the donut on. What's the last step?
The last step is to put the tools in the flat tire in the trunk and take that tire and have it repaired somewhere.
So how long can you drive on this for?
Well, it's labeled temporary use only for a reason. I would not drive on it I would drive on it as little as possible.
All right, so she's just gonna get us where we need to go.
Absolutely.
I think I could do this on my own.
You could.
Maybe not in a blizzard.
If you set your mind to it, you can almost do anything.
Well, thank you for letting us into your shop, Kevin.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
And we'll catch you on next month's episode of Mechanic Mondays.
Love the little motivational piece there at the end. You know, if you set your mind to it, you can do anything.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was a good one. Fun seeing that get done. I feel like they really covered a lot. I wanted to get into just a few more questions, though. Driving on a spare. I've seen people do that for longer than they should.
Yeah.
I know the rule of thumb is just kind of get it switched out as soon as possible, but how fast do you really need to get that switched out?
You know, most of those space saver spares, and they're space savers because they're designed to be very small and very light, so you can in your car. They say on them what their limits are. Most of the time, they recommend using them for up to 45 miles and up to 45 miles an hour.
Oh,
and
really?
so not driving on
just not very long, but not very fast either.
We want to stay on slower speeds. They're not designed for high speeds. They're not designed to last for a long time. They're designed to be really small and compact and hold air for a long period of time so that they're there when we need them. And so you don't want to drive on them too long. Your car also is not going to handle right with one tire being so much smaller and narrower than the other tires. If you were to hit a bump or icy patch or something like that, your car is going to handle much differently. So you certainly want to use that to be able to get you home safely or get you to a shop to get your tire repaired, but don't drive on it any longer than you absolutely have to.
Now, when you're in a situation where, let's say you got an appointment, you're getting your new tires on, but maybe you should have got them changed a few months ago. Obviously, that's not a situation you want to get into, but what are some tips if you're really due for a change, but you got to make it a few more days? How can you try to stay as safe as possible as far as driving tips?
The big thing is slowing down. You got to remember your tires are going to have they're needed the most the faster we're going, right? So the more speed, the faster we're turning, the harder we're braking is when we're really pushing those tires to the limits. And then remember that where the tires struggle the most is on slippery surfaces. So whether we're on gravel, we're on ice, or even just a lot of water. If it's raining hard, your tires are not going to perform as well, especially if the tread is really worn down. So I would definitely make sure you're watching. If you're on clear dry pavement, you're probably going to be pretty good, but you get into any of those extremes where you're driving on looser or slippery surfaces, or you're going faster, that's where you're really going to see problems.
And last thing I want to talk about, you guys have a very cool event going on.
We do.
This week, Dents for Dollars.
Yeah, this is really fun. We're partnering all month long with Sweet Shots in South Fargo, and they, at Sweet Shots, it's a golf practice area where you can practice your golf swing. Well, we put a car out in their field, and people can buy special balls that they have, and if you can get the ball to land inside the car, we took the glass out of the car, then you've got a chance to win some really amazing prizes, including Vikings tickets. We got a Traeger grill, or Traeger smoker. We've got a sapphire necklace, paddleboard, like all sorts of cool prizes that you can have the chance to win just by being able to show off your golfing skills.
That sounds like a blast. And that's running throughout the whole month?
The entire month of October.
Okay, and then it's going to get a little cold. I know they stay open all year long. They have the heat lamps and all that, but that's just a super cool event. And hey, the Vikings 5-0. That's going to be a hot ticket right now.
It's a great sweet seats for the Vikings game against the Falcons. So it's going to be awesome.
Ooh, Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, it's
not just any Vikings game.
It's going to be a great game.
Oh, that's awesome. Next time on TJ's Mechanic Mondays, we're talking about jumping cars, doing that safely. Excited for that one. Matt, anything else to add before we let you go?
Well, I'm hoping that the weather stays nice and warm like this so we don't have to worry about jump starting any cars before then.
I love that. Thank you. As always, pleasure to have you in studio, and thank you all for tuning in for another episode of TJ's Mechanic Mondays. Stay safe and have fun.